All right, we should be all set online. Thank you guys for joining us in the room. It's awesome to know about where everyone's coming from, to have so many new faces, and to also have some previous speakers that have been here years ago or multiple times. Thank you guys for coming back. It's lovely to have you all. And I want to make two quick announcements before we get moving. Thank you to ASM for hosting us. We wouldn't be able to have this for you guys without them. So we really appreciate ASM for all they do in One Health and supporting our group. So thank you to them. And also for those of you online, thank you for joining us. We're about to get started, but we couldn't be in your living room tonight if it weren't for the One Health Commission. So thank you to them. Please consider supporting both groups. We couldn't be here without them. So thank you to both. And now we'll get started with presenting our speaker tonight, or introducing our speaker. We have Anna Maria Castiglia, who's going to come up and present our speaker this evening. Anna Maria.
Thank you. You better take this because we use our hands when we talk.
Gotcha.
I don't want to float it out. Hi, I'm Anna Maria Castiglia, and like I said before, I am at the Center for Veterinary Medicine, and but today I'm here as one of us, all of us here, wanting to learn more about One Health. And Deb tells me I was her first friend in DC, okay? So I just want to get that straight from the beginning. All right. But I'm glad to see all these fellows here today, and kudos to all of you for being in your individual programs, where I'm looking at you all and I'm saying there's going to be great things coming out of each one of you, and that you're going to be doing for all of us. So thank you so much for the time you put in, and the heart and the passion. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about our speaker. Deborah Thomson, she's really interesting. Let's put it this way. She's been through a lot of things, and she's got a really interesting curriculum vitae. First of all, I want to tell you she's coming from California, but she does have some ties to New England. And I see here in her little description that she also has some ties to Canada. So I'm telling Bernadette and Ray that, because there are two Canadians here. So Dr. Deborah Thomson is a clinical veterinarian, a K-12 educator and curriculum developer, a first responder during natural disasters, a public speaker, a science policy advisor, a musician, she plays the flute, and a One Health advocate. She is passionate about science as a whole and has taught her One Health lesson in underserved public schools in California in order to inspire, well, almost 1,000 children to consider a future in science. And what beauty is that? That's wonderful. Congratulations to that. That's really something. Her lessons have been taught from coast to coast in the United States, as well as in Africa and South America, so she gets around. Her educational background includes attaining both a Bachelor of Music, honors in flute performance. You should have brought your flute, girl. It would have been a good beginning. And a Bachelor of Science in Biology from McGill University. She then taught in middle school. Later, she attended a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree, as well as a certificate in International Veterinary Medicine at Tufts University. She then completed a one-year rotating small animal internship in Southern California. And it's my pleasure today to present to you Dr. Deborah Thomson.
When I go and introduce myself in third grade classrooms, so talking to 8-year-olds, I say, "Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Debbie and I'm a veterinarian." "What is a veterinarian?" I ask them. What do you think that they say? What is a veterinarian? Just call it out. An animal doctor, right? And that would be the correct answer. What I actually get is often somebody who only eats vegetables. And then I have to explain the difference between a vegetarian and a veterinarian. So from that simple example, you can see clearly that speaking to kids is vastly different than having a conversation with an adult. There are several people online that have an education-only background. and One Health is very new to them. Welcome to those people. There are many people in front of me in Washington, D.C. that have dedicated their lives to One Health. Congratulations to you too. Today, I'm merging those two worlds so that everybody in this room and online around the world can understand how can you bring One Health into K-12 classrooms. We're going to first get everybody on the same page and understand really what is One Health. Then we're going to explain why is One Health important and explore why is it important specifically to teach the next generation. Next, we're going to figure out how can we actually get kids involved, who can go out and teach, and when is the best time to approach teachers with a One Health lesson plan. What is One Health? When I talk to adults, I often use a story. This is Jack. Jack is, in this picture, a 6-year-old, and he's actually a son of one of my close friends named Amy. Jack loves 2 things. Can you guess one of those? Soccer player, right? And for the benefit of everybody outside of America, football. Thank you. Now the 6-year-old Jack turns into an 11-year-old Jack. Jack at this point loves, like I said, 2 things. One is soccer/football, and the other one is animals. A boy after my own heart. Now, one day he finds this adorable little kitten, and it's a stray. And he finds a piece of yarn, and he goes up to that kitten and starts to play with it, as kids do. As some stray kittens have, this particular kitten had fleas. The kitten was really rambunctious and starts playing really hard with Jack. Jack accidentally gets a little nick on his finger because the cat accidentally scratched him. Nobody thinks anything of it. A week later, he cannot get out of bed. He has a really bad stomach ache and he starts to see one doctor. Then Amy, his mother, takes him to a second doctor, a third doctor. After 2 years, he has already seen over 30 doctors. It wasn't until he reached this point where he was wheelchair bound. This is when he's 13 years old, 2 years later, when Amy, his mother, brought him to a One Health team. What do I mean by a One Health team? I mean a human doctor, so a physician, working with a veterinarian. They practiced One Health. The veterinarian could figure out that, okay, the kitten had something called Bartonella, which is a bacterial infection that it acquired through fleas. The physician figured out, okay, well, we could link the kitten to the person. And so it was the One Health team that eventually saved his life. So this is him on the very first day of being able to not only walk, but kick the soccer ball, football. One Health truly saved his life. So what is One Health? When I talk to the general public, I say it's teamwork between people who really care about the environment, animal health, and human health. I keep it simple. When I talk to teachers in particular, the teachers out there, raise your hands. Yep, I see you. Out of that definition, that simple definition, what is screaming out at you? What is really important for teachers? It's teamwork and people who care. Another way to say people who care, people who have empathy. Empathy is a big word right now because empathy is the solution to bullying. Show me hands. Who thinks that bullying is a big topic right now? Yeah, for the benefit of everybody online, everybody raise their hand. Absolutely. Empathy is taught actively now in schools in this country. Now, when I talk to the general public, I often list the environment first. Can you think if I say I was going into a summer camp that was focused on animals, what would I say first? Probably animal health, right? Good. Okay, there's a trend here. And when I talk to pre-medical students, what would I say first? Human health. But that's just health to them, right? They would just they wouldn't say human health, right? So it's health to them, and even more so public health. So that's how I try to change the message and figure out who my target audience is and what message flies best for them, right? Okay, now we take it back and we're talking to the students. I keep it nice and simple. Not only do I say that One Health is teamwork between people who care about the environment, animal health, and human health, I draw this out. And notice how I use different colors and I use illustrations. Any child in this country older than 8 years old will understand what a Venn diagram is. So use that to your advantage. Let's see, how do the kids actually interpret what One Health is? Well, ignore the spelling mistakes. He's just learning. But he clearly understands that everything's connected, right? People, animals, environment. And look, there's even a little hole in that tree. Very artistic. This child made it a little bit more full-bodied, let's say. And there's a lot of hair on the girl. The boy has hair, and certainly the tree looks like it's becoming a tree. And this person wanted to keep it nice and simple. You can argue that all three children truly understand what One Health is all about. Honestly, teaching kids is easy. It's the teaching the adults that's hard. Why is One Health important in this world? Can anybody explain to me why teaching One Health to anybody is important? Well, it's so that you can keep the environment, animals, and people all healthy all at the same time. So says Morgan, an 8-year-old student of mine. So let's take a step back. Yes, I'm a veterinarian, not a vegetarian. And I do have a teaching background. Before veterinary school, I was teaching adults, elementary school students, and middle school students. I'm going to talk mainly about my middle school experience. This is when I was teaching English for these kids, it would be the third language. And my kid, and when I say kids, I mean students, but they were actually, I felt like they were my kids, and all the teachers, I'm sure, understand that feeling. My kids were 11 to 16-year-olds. And I remember the very first day I introduced myself to them. I said, I don't speak any French. Okay, that was a lie. I do speak French. I do understand French, but I didn't want them to know. I said, I don't know any French, but I know the bad words. So if I hear you say bad words, that's it. Because 11 to 16-year-olds, what are they going to do? They're going to try you, right? Push the boundaries. So you lay down, you lay down the rules early. But that year was absolutely incredible. I tried to teach English in a way to get them to forget that they're speaking to me in English. For instance, this painting, I don't know if anybody can recognize the painter. Yeah? Oh, I heard the right answer, Norman Rockwell, one of my favorite artists. If you can see what he illustrated, is a family on the way to a vacation and then a family coming from a vacation. And when I was bringing this illustration to my students, we were practicing verb tenses. So in the morning, we were doing this. At night, we will be looking like this, right? It was such a success that the kids wanted to not only make plays out of it, but they were acting it out at the end of the day. So activity-based lessons are really the way to go. I also was able to teach adults both in music and English. Okay, why is teaching One Health to children important? Can anybody answer that question? I hear whispers. To create a sustainable world by changing society. If we talk to the next generation, then we have more impact on the world, right? I have gone into schools with bars on the windows. You have to sometimes go through metal detectors to get to these kids. Unfortunately, these kids may not have the opportunity to go to college and get an undergraduate degree. Unfortunately, that's their reality as it stands right now. But I want these kids to understand the importance of respecting the environment, because a sick environment means sick people and animals, right? You don't want to litter, because litter will attract more wildlife, and that's not healthy for the wild animals, and then wild animals can bring diseases, right? So it's not smart all around. So you need to respect the environment if you want to stay healthy and you want your pet dog to stay healthy too. I feel like right now in One Health, there are a lot of people with advanced degrees, people who've been very fortunate to have these advanced degrees. But if you really, really, really want to make changes in the world, you have to talk to the kids. Okay, another illustration. We're going to use our little imagination brains right now. Okay, now I am going to ask you a question. What is this child trying to depict? It's a vocabulary word, and hint, that vocabulary word is not written down on the paper. That would be cheating. That was a child's depiction of, any guesses? Oh, zoonotic disease. And who can explain what a zoonotic disease is? To an 8-year-old. Good luck, right? It is a disease that can jump between different species. And when I say jump, I physically do it for the benefit of the international crowd. I jump because I want the kids to see me, hear me, feel me in the ground. The more senses you can reach to a child, the better they'll remember. Granted, sometimes you have to explain what a species is, and that's what I do for kids under 9 years old. Now, who can teach One Health? Okay, first off, what is One Health? Somebody scream it out. I'm hearing it, yeah. Yeah, you got it. Environment, animal health, and human health. Exactly. So you know what that means? Who can teach One Health? You can teach One Health. Thank you very much. Okay, now how can you bring One Health knowledge into your community? The trick is just talk to anybody who has ears. Talk to as many people as possible. You don't know what their backstories are. You don't know their connections. This is the list that I used to bring One Health into my community while I was living in California. I first used Toastmasters International, and to the benefit of everybody who doesn't know what Toastmasters is, it's a communication club. They say it's a public speaking club, but truly it's a communication club. So one day I present a speech about One Health and the way I view the future of One Health. Afterwards, another member of Toastmasters comes up to me. He said, you know, I know somebody looking to have more volunteers at Earth Day. Would you be interested? What do you think I said? Yes, absolutely. So sign me up. I also have reached out to STEM programs, and also STEM programs have found me eventually throughout my development in California. Career Day, whenever, yes, I'm a veterinarian, and I've been practicing in clinics for the last 7 years. The thing is, as a veterinarian, I've been practicing One Health on a daily basis. Say if I prescribed a flea medication, or I had to have a conversation about a flea medication to an owner. I need to know, is there a toddler around the house? Why is that important? Because I need to figure out if it's an oral flea medication that I'll give or a topical on the skin. Because what do toddlers do? They touch everything. And where do they? Yeah, exactly, right in the mouth. So important to be aware of not only the animal's health, but the well-being of the family, because they share the same environment. Summer camps, for sure, particularly animal and environmental summer camps, have taken a liking to my lessons, and local colleges and universities have been very helpful. This is one of my materials for the Earth Day presentation. I also had word games and board games available during Earth Day, but notice how I kept it nice and simple, and this was all recycled material. Other ideas for community outreach. Now, these are ideas that I have not yet used, but are very easy to do. If nobody else has heard of Rotary Club, like Toastmasters International, is all around the world. And the typical person who's a part of this community outreach program is retirees. Okay, that's the typical member, a retiree. And what do a lot of retirees have a lot of? Free time. And what did I say Rotary Club was all about? Community outreach, free time, community outreach. You have built-in volunteers right there. So exactly. So definitely look around and see where your closest Rotary Club is. Other community resources as listed: Girl Scouts, Girl Guides in Canada, Boy Scouts, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps. If you live in a country where there is an active Peace Corps organization, community, then reach out to them and make sure that they understand really what is One Health. And ultimately, wherever kids go for field trips is where you want to go and teach the kids about One Health. Okay, now Bay Area Scientists in Schools. That is a community outreach program that's associated with University of California at Berkeley. Now, I've never studied there. I was never a student there, but I lived down the street. And once I heard about this community outreach program that brings scientists and engineers, mostly from UC Berkeley, into the community, particularly underserved schools, I was hooked. I needed to go talk to them. The whole reason for these volunteers to go in is because we're science role models. How cool is it for a little kid to see somebody who not only studies at UC Berkeley or is, you know, a scientist or an engineer, but in real life, but that person cared enough to come into your school, and not only that, taught you something that they care about? What are the chances that they'd be interested in science after that, right? And if you can develop, say, One Health lesson plan that's super fun, you can imagine how many more kids would want to go into science. And that's what I've been able to do out in California. Look at your local university and college. See if they have a community outreach program. If they don't, maybe it's time to start one. Never forget your why. Why, again, are we teaching kids about One Health? Yep, it's the future, right? It's sustainability. You want to have the general public understand really what is the importance of One Health, teach empathy, create a lifestyle change in your community. Now, this particular lesson was taught by one of my friends who was living in Uganda. And she was teaching one of my lessons that was focused on avian influenza or bird flu. I don't know how many of you have been able to work and live in a developing country, but in my past, I've had the opportunity, and I remember that there are rolling blackouts, okay? And that means no electricity for a certain amount of time in the day. Now that means that I couldn't rely on any technology. So how am I gonna explain, thinking of influenza or flu virus, a mutation, without showing a video? The way I got around that is by playing the telephone game. So for the benefit of those that don't know what the telephone game is, the kids sit in a circle, one person whispers a long phrase to the next person, and then it goes all the way around the circle, and I can tell you for sure, there's gonna be a mutation in that sentence. So you have to be creative when you teach kids. Okay, so it's time to come and join the movement. But at this point, you might be like, okay, I'm sold, but I really don't know how. I'm going to give you 3 tips to get through that step. Number 1, keep it simple. Use different colors, use very simple images. Number 2, know your audience. Who's your audience in the classroom? Kids, exactly. So the benefit of this particular lecture series is that all the slides are going to be saved on the One Health Academy website. It's going to get busy, so I'm warning you now on the slides, it's going to get busy, but you can always go back and review. And I tried to make it as friendly to the eyes as possible. For different ages, there are different best techniques, and we're going to go through it one by one. For 5 to 7-year-olds, the attention span, as you can imagine, is quite short. 8 minutes maximum. If you can try to stick to 5 minutes, you get a gold star. You want the kids to go, wow, that was so cool. And you want the kids to run home to their caretaker and tell them all about that One Health lesson. By doing that, you don't just teach one generation, you teach multiple. And you really get into your community that way. These kids want to touch things, smell things, do things, hear things, get to all the senses. And don't be surprised if they ask questions, because some of these questions, let me tell you, they are creative with their questions. So they can surprise you. This is the me stage. There is no you in that equation. Do not expect them to share anything and use lots of colors. Stepping it up, 7 to 9-year-olds. They are inquisitive, they ask lots of questions. Sometimes they can answer their own questions or their friends' questions. They start to be aware of other people. It's not just me, me, me anymore. You have to get these kids to move. With this particular lesson, this is my 8 to 9-year-old students, and it was a scavenger hunt. And they were looking for eggs, and I brought some examples over here. And inside the eggs, oh, the poor kids thought that there was going to be candy in there. Instead, there are pictures of like ticks and like dirty water, depending on the type of class. So, you know what? The kids laughed, they learned, they had fun. And after the epidemic model, because scientists work with models, right? So after the epidemic model happened, then the kids broke up into smaller groups, and I had a few volunteers with me, and these smaller groups were rotating between a veterinarian role, a physician role, and an environmental health specialist role. And the whole goal is to go after the same questions from different ways. These two questions are, how can you stop an epidemic from happening, and how can you prevent an epidemic from happening? So it's really One Health in action. 9 to 12-year-olds, their attention span is a bit longer, 10 to 15 minutes. They do really have a stronger sense of self. There could be one dominating student in this area of the classroom, and then on the complete opposite area, there could be a quiet section, but that quiet section still has questions. So be cognizant of that. They definitely want to challenge themselves, and motivation for any age is important. They do want to be heard. 12 to 14-year-olds. Group projects should be totally fine, but be aware that not only are they individualistic, but they're aware of their surroundings. Notice the little kid with blue hair in the front? Yeah, that's definitely typical 12 to 14-year-olds. Time competition is your friend. Use a timer. If you run over or under, the kids will notice, and you don't want free time with this age, to be completely honest. The point system is incredibly helpful. So if you have a competition at the end of the classroom that is a summary of everything else that the kids learned before, then you say, in preparation for questions, say, okay, this is going to be a 5-point question. Do not deviate from that. Okay? If you change it, they will know, and you will end the lesson. So be aware. 14 to 16-year-olds. 20 to 30-minute attention spans. Social structure really is a real thing. Students care about what others think. The activities can vary. It could be in individuals, pairs, or small groups. Definitely include the teacher if there are problems within the group. Competition is definitely possible, and what's super cool is you could start to debate with them. That gets interesting. 16 to 18-year-olds, the attention span is longer. You can use more complicated examples. This particular age, you'd be totally fine in talking about, say, the Ebola epidemic that started at the cusp of 2013-14, and the patient zero, so the very first patient that died, was a 2-year-old little boy. 18-year-olds can appreciate that and will understand it. It's still important to understand the social structure, and groups should be totally fine. Last step, understand the teachers. In order to get to the students, you have to get through the teachers. Teaching is hard. In my opinion, it is one of the hardest professions on this planet. They want to have a guest speaker. They want to have a break. And particularly somebody from like a STEM background, right? Somebody who's inspiring, somebody who wants to come and talk to the kids. They want that break. They welcome it. Don't be surprised if you have to have a background check, particularly in this country. Whenever I brought volunteers with the Bay Area Scientists in Schools program, they all needed background checks, and so did I. Private school versus public school. Now, depending on what school you're approaching, the teacher has more or less of a say in their curriculum. Private school teachers tend to be a little bit more flexible with their subject, whereas public schools sometimes have to teach the test. Now, this is the kicker. Depending on where you live in this country, there are different standards. So we're going to dive into that. Now, for the international audience online, I want to have you look at these next generation science standards that pertain to American students and compare and contrast what's available at home in your community, because there probably are standards wherever you are throughout the world, but they may be different. Okay, next generation science standards. It was developed originally in the early mid 2000s that was developed from 4 different organizations. Those 4 organizations built up a framework. Remember the word framework. From there, teachers were included and they formed the next generation science standards. These standards are what kids should really understand before they reach college age. And the whole point of them is so that so that you will be prepared for work. Okay, now it's not available in every state, and depending on where you do live in this country, it varies. So we'll go through it bit by bit. You see the light gray? Those are the 6 states that have completely independent science standards. It's 29% of US students, and it's 29% because every state has a different population, right? There are 24 states that follow the framework only, and 20 states plus Washington, D.C. that have adopted next generation science standards. If you do live in West Virginia, Tennessee, or Oklahoma, in the next 2 to 3 years, those states are going to adopt next generation science standards. So if you're looking to develop a curriculum, make sure it does follow next generation science standards. Okay, this is busy, but we're only going up to grade 5, and I'm going to have this saved on the One Health Academy website. The old standards are going to be grayed out. Those were the standards that were for the students before 2013. I wanted to leave this on the slides so that you can see what a 5- and 6-year-old is capable of learning, okay? But we're going to talk about the new, in quotations, since 2013, next generation science standard topics. One Health can be applied in a lot of different topics. It just depends on how you see it and how you angle it and how you pitch it. What's incredibly important to remember is if you're going to create a lesson plan, make sure that you list these topics at the top of the lesson plan. You have to understand this is the type of thing that teachers are going to look for. If you don't match any of this, the teachers are going to just toss it on the floor. Okay, so for your benefit, I've highlighted where I see One Health working. For instance, how parents help offspring survive for grade 1. Grade 1 would be 6- and 7-year-olds. You could talk about how a tree produces a pine cone and how pine cones are set up in a certain way to have the seeds disperse at a certain temperature or moisture or whatnot. And then you can talk about how there is a difference between different species when it comes to children walking versus a cow walking, a cow calf. It happens instantly, right, compared to a child. So compare and contrast. The whole point of bringing this to the kids is for them to see the world in a different light, right? Holistic. Grade 2, One Health would work very well in diversity of life in different habitats. Grade 3, and I started with the Bay Area Scientists in Schools program, particularly with grade 3, because there's one science standard that's truly screaming out at me. Do you guys see this? It's the interdependent relationships and ecosystems. Interdependent? Are you kidding me? That's One Health. That's teamwork. Easy, easy. I also, for your benefit, have highlighted some other options. Grade 4, impact of earth processes on humans, as well as animals, as well as plants. Grade 5, for instance, the decomposers and ecosystems. So you could talk about a compost pile and how that works and how insects could be used with compost, and then what type of food can people get from that compost, right? How plants grow, and then how people can benefit. The world is connected, right? Okay, now we're zooming out. We're leaving just the United States and we're thinking big picture. This probably is recognizable to a bunch of people in the audience. It's the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, I wanted to say UN, but it just kept looking like unsustainable, and I did not want that. So, for the record, it is United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And just like before, what I have done is I've highlighted where One Health lessons can easily work. Now, think about, say, number 14, life below water. You could talk about, say, climate change, and that works well with 13, which is climate action, and 7, affordable and clean energy. But say climate change, showing acidification changes to the ocean, right? And then how can that affect fish? And then how can the fish help affect people on an island nation? Because what are they eating? Fish, right? Now, particularly number 7, affordable and clean energy and climate action. Look at what I found last month in the newspaper. Teachers and students push for climate change education in California. And newsflash, amazing that Italy is now making climate change class mandatory for every student. Way to go, Italy, if you're listening. Okay, climate change and STEM are big topics now. What is STEM? Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Sometimes you see STEAM with an A for arts. Sometimes you see an extra M for medicine. We need to jump on those topics. Now's the time to talk about One Health. You can easily incorporate One Health into any climate change lesson. Keep in mind, you need to tell the teachers it encompasses empathy and encourages teamwork. Now we can think technology. There are a lot of technologies that can be applied to environmental health, animal health, and human health. Can you think of any? Well, don't tell me, just make a lesson. Okay, now at this point you might be like, okay, fine, I'm convinced. I want to create lessons, but I don't know where to start. Well, here is a very handy list of material that I know about. Now, granted, I don't know of every resource that's on this planet. That's what the One Health Commission is for, because they compile a lot of material. But certainly something that you need to be aware of. Bay Area Scientists in Schools that I was associated with back in California, they have really nice templates. Yeah, if you're intimidated by teaching 5-year-olds, go to that website and you'll see what works. They don't have anything that doesn't work, but you'll see what works and just copy it. Center for Disease Control and Prevention has a really interesting lesson. Believe it or not, you can get salmonella or bacteria from hedgehogs. So there was an outbreak, an epidemic a few years ago, and I think it was like 54 people got sick, 8 ended up in the hospital. Anyway, the thought was it's because the pet hedgehog, and what do kids want to have at home? They want to have pet hedgehogs, so be aware. Bay Area Lyme Foundation is based out of California, and they have really good lesson material about Lyme disease, but you can certainly tweak that to whatever tick-borne disease you have in your environment, right, in your community. The One Health Commission, as I said, they do compile a lot of great information throughout the whole world, so definitely look and see what they have online to inspire you. Talk about inspiration. The University of Colorado at Boulder has partnered up with Denver Public Schools. They've created, through a research practice partnership, a biology class that lasts for several weeks. And one of those biology classes is for high school, is entitled, "Why Don't Antibiotics Work Like They Used to?" What? What? How cool is that? Right? So antibiotic resistance, to the benefit, for people who don't know what antibiotic resistance it is, it's when a clinician, a veterinarian or a physician gives an antibiotic and it's done inappropriately, as in we give too low of a dose, too high of a dose, too short of a dose or duration, and too long of a duration, or simply we use the wrong antibiotic. Oops, right? And the surviving bacteria that we're trying to kill, some of them can survive and they replicate. but they've already seen the weapon that you're using, the antibiotic, so they're that much harder to treat the next time around. By the year 2050, the prediction is that more people will be dying around the world from antibiotic and antimicrobial resistance than cancer today. This is a real thing. So, good thing there's something that Public Health England developed called e-bug.eu. If you want to spend a whole day on this website, I give you full permission. It is so much fun. And now you can see how much of a dork I am. No, this is absolutely amazing. They have games. They have games for various age groups. They have community resources. They have books that I brought here. They have card games that I also brought here, so you can look afterward. And the videos and the game, it's inspirational. I'm very happy to say that this particular website has been translated to over 30 languages, has been used not only throughout the UK, throughout Europe and Asia. Pretty cool, huh? Rice University has also created this online game. It's, at least on my computer, it was a little bit hard to maneuver, but it is possible. Maybe it's just my computer. Now, this definitely deserves a shout out. This was fun to play. New York Hall of Science. Notice how it says, it's the best nerd adventure ever. Transmissions gone viral. If anybody remembers back in 1999, there were several people in New York City who were dying at the same time as crows falling from the sky. Who here remembers that? I certainly do. That was scary, right? And it was actually a veterinarian at the Bronx Zoo, Tracy McNamara, that figured out that this was West Nile virus, and that was the first time it was detected on this continent. Mind blowing, right? So Transmissions Gone Viral is loosely based on that story. And it's the kids going through an epidemic and they have to serve as detectives. It's a lot of fun. This is something important to know if you're going to be developing One Health lesson plans in this country, pitch it to the next generation science storylines. You can see it's a nonprofit. They work based off of the framework, which we already discussed, and the next generation science standards. They want to really use material that explains real phenomena like One Health problems and solve real problems like One Health problems, right? A core challenge, they say, is the lack of curriculum material. Well, I got a solution for that. More resources that I know about. The Smithsonian Museum here in Washington, D.C. at the Natural History Museum has a fabulous outbreak exhibit. If you cannot make it to Washington, D.C., you have the ability to have a do-it-yourself version. So you can bring it to your community free of charge. If there's nothing else that you remember from this talk, remember what I'm right about to say. One Hope. One Hope stands for the International One Health for One Planet Education Initiative. If you want to do what I've been doing, but you want to do it with other people, unfortunately, I did not have that opportunity, but if you want to do what I've been doing in your community all around the world, so international audience, listen up, and you want help doing it, sign up with One Hope. Their first meeting is going to be, I believe, in the next few weeks. So go to the One Health Commission website, type in One Hope, and you can get on that list. Here in the United States, there is a One Health Education US group. So again, you could do what I've been doing, but with a team to help develop lessons. You can, of course, always contact me. I have developed multiple lessons of various durations for various age groups on lots of different topics: waterborne disease, zoonotic disease, vector-borne disease, so that means like mosquitoes, ticks, foodborne disease, how wildlife and domestic animal interactions can lead to disease in people, and the importance of vaccines. That actually is an underlying thing in all of my lessons. Lessons are easily modified to meet the cultural needs of the students and the technical needs of the teachers. Okay, now we know how to develop lessons. When can we bring our fabulous One Health lesson to the teachers? When the idea is solid and when you write it in a style that they understand. So keep in mind, does it meet the standards locally? When I first introduced myself to the Bay Area Scientists in Schools program, I came with 7 different lesson plans in hand. And they told me, well, you know, typically it's for undergraduate students and graduate students, but we've been toying with the idea of having members of the community come and do it too. So let's just use you as a pilot program. I said, yes, let's do it. Best times to talk to teachers are the start of September and January. Why is that? Start of the term, exactly. This is when the teachers are more open to listening to you. Now, sustainability for your lesson. You got into the classrooms, congratulations, you had fabulous lessons, but say for instance, you got a job on the other side of the country and you have to move 3,000 miles. You have to make sure that your lesson plan can stand on its own 2 feet. Get feedback from the teachers, keep what works, ditch the rest, and train the trainer. So you see this arrow? That points to Doris Ma. She's an undergraduate student at UC Berkeley, and she's continuing my One Health lesson plan with 3rd graders right now in California. She's also recruited other members of the pre-veterinary club, so shout out to them, at UC Berkeley. And I leave you with a lessons lesson. At the end of one lesson, a little girl was eagerly raising her hand. She had a burning question, and she looked just like this. She was out of her seat, over the desk. Her fingers were so spread apart that I thought that they were going to dislocate from her knuckles. It was impressive. She had her question, are you going to teach One Health to kids all the way around the world? What do you think my answer was? My answer was, yes, absolutely, but I need your help. To all those listening to me here in Washington, D.C. or around the world, I need your help to bring One Health into your community. Because after all, at the center of One Health is teamwork.
Great job. Thank you so much, Dr. Thomson, for your incredible presentation. We are short on time, so I can take 1 or 2 questions, and then I would definitely encourage everyone to check out this amazing material she hauled here for us, so it's great. Any questions in the audience that I can pass the mic to? Sorry, no, go for it. I'm gonna give it to you first, then pass.
Thanks so much. That was really awesome.
Thank you.
And very inspiring. I'm curious what your thoughts are about teaching about wildlife in a way that doesn't lead to fear.
Yeah, excellent question. So for the benefit of everybody, the question was, how can we teach kids to, I'll modulate a little bit, respect wildlife instead of fear wildlife? Yeah. Ultimately, it comes down to education and to have them understand, say bats, for instance, right? Bats in Australia. Bats are a keystone species. So that means that the environment will completely collapse if bats are not, or flying foxes in particular, are not in the environment. So it's important to explain to the kids the importance in the ecosystem of wild animals. And you can also tell the adults in the room as well, because maybe they have more of an impact. Because certainly the tourism industry will go down fast in that type of environment. So it comes down to education and telling good stories. Yeah, good question.
I thought it was pretty effective when you talked about how whenever you're having a conversation with someone about One Health, you typically predicated on what they're more so interested in, whether it's the health aspect, the animals aspect, or the environmental aspect. And I'm wondering, this could be anecdotal, but as it pertains to my community, a lot of individuals are pretty aware about the human health aspect of things and the animal health, but the environmental side is kind of not even the back burner, it's a non-conversation. Many parts where I live, where my family's from in Arkansas. And I'm wondering if when you're preparing a curriculum for a group of students, do you typically have an overemphasis on the part that's less emphasized by the community, or do you try to have an equitable balance associated with all three concepts associated with one?
Yeah, excellent question. So to summarize that question, it was, do I tailor the material, the lesson material, to hit the needs of the community and their wants and priorities? Okay, so my question is yes, I try to tailor it as much as possible because I want them to accept my message eagerly. When I have my avian influenza or the bird flu topic, for instance, I use that in only countries that really are super worried about bird flu because I feel like it can make the most impact there. I certainly do include whenever I talk about One Health, I do include the environment, animal health, and human health. I don't forget that. And when I talk about the environment, I also include and make sure kids understand the importance of plants. Sometimes people differentiate between environment and plants, but in my lessons, I want to keep it as simple as possible. So I do combine those two. So yes, in a nutshell, I do include animals, plants, environment, and humans in every single lesson that I have created.
Some of the specifics in your lesson plans, you mentioned different diseases and outbreaks. How do vaccines fit into your lesson plans?
Okay, yeah, excellent question. So the question was, how do vaccines play into my lessons? And certainly around the world, there are some parents that do not believe in vaccines, right? How do I get around that? Well, I am not an MD, I'm not a physician, I am a veterinarian. So I talk about vaccinating the dogs. And what do kids like? They like animals. So if the kids can see that I'm, as a veterinarian, giving a vaccine to an animal because I want to make sure that the body stays nice and strong and protects it as much as possible from disease, oh, could that actually work for me? Maybe go talk to your parents. Yes, good question.
Take one more question before we wrap up tonight. Final thoughts.
Not a question, but just, and I can project along those lines, could you not say something to the effect of the concept of herd immunity, which makes sense in a veterinary community, but then it also applies to human health.
Yes, okay, so the question was about herd immunity and when that can be applied in lessons. I totally agree with you, that's an important concept. It's not gonna fly for 5-year-olds because that's about the me stage, right? So that only works for high school students. And certainly I encourage those people out there listening and inspired to create One Health lesson plans to include herd immunity as a concept when teaching anywhere between 15-year-olds and 18-year-olds. I think that age could truly understand it. Yeah.
Please join me in thanking Dr. Thomson. Thank you so much again. And a few quick announcements before I let you guys go tonight. We are meeting again once more before the holiday or after Thanksgiving, but for other holidays on Tuesday, December 10th. So look forward to seeing you guys. More information will be on the website. And a quick announcement for the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History. They are having an after-hours event and teaming up with Whitman Walker Health to host Never Silent Living with HIV. So keep that on your agenda. It is on Monday, December 2nd. If you'd like more information, please see me after. But it is in observance of World AIDS Day, turning the stage over to HIV survivors and those who have cared for loved ones with AIDS. So just for your awareness, for those local in the community. And yeah, thank you so much for coming. See Anne-Maria, if you haven't gotten square with us, bathrooms are in the back. Please grab food on the way out and look forward to seeing you guys next month. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you. Great job.